So hi everybody, my name is Ken Countess. I'm here with Tony Ruben today, and this is part 23 of our ongoing series, Protecting Your Business. This is actually the second live event that I'm doing today. This one is called Challenging Times and Decisive Actions. 23 in a series of online events. I'm doing at least one event every single day during the month of April. I started doing these about mid-March. And the idea behind these events is to help businesses deal with the current environment and really bring the business community together. This event is going to be co-presented by me, Ken Countess, and Tony Ruben, and Tony will introduce himself in a few moments. Today's conversation is going to be what businesses need to do to ensure survival during these challenging times, and then a prescription with real-time actions, strategies, and considerations that businesses need to make today. We'd encourage you to, while you're on this live event, ask questions. Let us know what your concerns are. What's your business doing? How is it doing? And what ideas do you have that can help others? And as I mentioned, there will be a playback available later. If you're just joining us or you're not familiar with Zoom, we encourage you to raise your hand when we ask. Use the Q&A and the chat buttons. If you're not sure where they are or if they're not visible on your screen right now, move your mouse down to the bottom of the screen. You'll see a black bar appear, and that's where you'll see the chat and the Q&A and the raise hand. So as a quick test, type in the chat box where you are joining us from today. I know we had registrations from all over. The webinar that I did just about an hour ago had people in Asia and Europe and North America. So let's see where everybody is. So far I'm seeing Oviedo and Orlando. I know we have people outside of Florida as well. So our goal is to facilitate the sharing of knowledge and support at this uncertain time. Our goal, very simply, is to be helpful. So I encourage you to take notes and ask questions. You know, the backdrop on all of this is consumer confidence is sharply lower now than it was just a couple of months ago. And near and long-term impact on business right now kind of looks like this. It's a big old question mark. We're just not entirely sure where things are going to go. We know that we're going to get out of this situation at some point, but we don't know when. That's obviously the big question mark. There are a lot of very smart people working on ways to bring us out of this faster, to help the people who are suffering with the illness to not only survive but thrive, but also now our businesses too. So many of our businesses have quite simply been shut down. We don't have access to our physical locations anymore. We've had to become much more creative than we ever thought we'd have to be. So the question really is, what can we do today? So we're going to talk about ways to survive the downturn. And your facilitators today are me, Ken Countess. I've got over 40 years as a marketer, dealing with all aspects of strategic planning, marketing, communications. I worked for 3 very large Fortune 100 companies. For the last 20 years, I've been managing director of the Countess Group. We help businesses like yours gain an unfair advantage over your competition. We are a full-service marketing consultancy. Now let me turn it over to Tony and let him introduce himself and let you know who he is and what he does. Go ahead, Tony.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tony Ruben, and thank you for putting on the series of seminars, Ken. When I heard about them, I thought it was a really valuable public service because a lot of folks are facing issues like this for the first time and really need to know what to do. I currently have 2 hats on. I am the founder and managing director of Inflection Consulting, and we're a consulting firm that deals with dynamic companies. In other words, companies that are rapidly growing or in distress, and we focus on what I call merchant banking activities, helping companies raise capital, helping them refine and optimize their strategies so they can make optimal cash flow and profitability from their companies, and then helping them exit at the appropriate time. My other hat is, as of about a year and a half, for about the last year and a half, I've been serving as CEO of Blue Halo Biomedical, which is a really exciting award-winning medical device company that I'm running. And in fact, part of our issues are what prompted me to reach out to Ken, and our issues specifically are around capital raising. And when this thing started, I saw people logically canceling in-person meetings, and perhaps less logically, but typically pulling back on funding commitments because everyone's just a little bit more conservative and just waiting to see where things are going to go. And this is for a product that frankly is COVID-19 agnostic. We're a medical device company and we have no exposure to the consumer market. So if I'm seeing that, I know everybody else is seeing that as well.
Great. Thanks, Tony. So once again, all along this hour, if you have questions or comments, you'd like us to go through things in a little more detail, we have that opportunity to do that. And also, by the way, at the end, you'll be able to check out our contact information. So if you've got specific questions for Tony or for me or for both, you'll be able to shoot those along to us. In this very first section, I'm going to talk a little bit about marketing. And most people, let's be honest, most people struggle with marketing. It's just not second nature to them. I've been doing this for a really long time. What winds up happening for many people is when you ask them what they're doing about marketing, they look like a deer in the headlights. They're like, I have no idea what to do. And so for most people, they're just afraid that they won't get it right. So they don't do anything at all. Obviously a mistake. And especially now, when so many of us are now forced to work in a virtual world that we're just not accustomed to dealing with. So a lot of people I've been speaking to in the last month or so have said, I'm not doing anything at all because I don't know what to do. So they do nothing or they do next to nothing. So here's what you should do. And we could spend a week on this. We could spend a month on this. I mean, I've got a 6-year degree on this. 2 degrees is what I should say, a 4 and a 2, right? Bachelor and master's. So what does every business need to do? We need to gather up leads. We need to nurture those leads. In fact, companies that excel at lead nurturing generate 50% more sales-ready leads at a third lower cost. And the reality, though, is that 70% of qualified leads are not ready to buy when they first interact with your business. For very few of us, our services or our products are impulse buys. As I said, that's for very few of us. For most, it takes some nurturing. And by the way, this may or may not be a surprise to you, but nearly 80% of marketing leads never turn into a sale. Most of the time, that's due to a lack of nurturing of the leads. Did you know that on average, it takes 5 contacts with a prospect to turn them into a customer? And most salespeople, these are professionals in the field. Most people make 1 phone call and they give up. The actual data is 80% of people don't follow up with their leads, and 44% of salespeople make 1 phone call and then they give up. So I'm here to give you 5 steps to lead nurturing value. The first is take your list of leads and segment them. Drop them into buckets. And those buckets may be any variety of things. It could be demographic, could be income, could be where they are in your pipeline. But not everybody is at the same buying stage for a variety of reasons. So make sure that you segment your list. Next, not everybody, again, is the same. You need to create offers that convert. Different things for different people. And then when they do buy and when you deliver, wow them. That will get them coming back. Next, ask them for a referral. That's obviously word of mouth is the cheapest form of advertising. It's the best form of advertising. Who better than to refer you than someone that you've wowed and given excellent service to? That it will open the door for you to immediately have an opportunity to make more sales. And then step 5, very simply, is get started. So a little bit more on each of these 5 steps. Segmenting your list increases response by 5 to 10-fold. So don't do a blanket email, for instance, with the same message to everybody. Target your audience. Understand who they are, what their buying behaviors are, and speak to individuals as individuals. Don't use the word blast when you're sending out a marketing message. Who wakes up in the morning saying, sure, blast me with everything? Rather, give them valuable educational information that will help them live their lives better. There are different types of buyer characteristics, and unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all of them, but very simply, you can carve up your audience list either by demographic, by psychographic, by their level of engagement, and their purchase behavior. Number 2 is create offers that convert. After you segment your list, identify the gaps. Do you have, for example, a good, better, best tiering on your products? That will enable you to convert more of your leads if you understand where they are in the process or what their needs are. Let's say, for example, that you sell life insurance. If you sell life insurance, the product that you may offer someone in their 20s will be very different than the product you offer for someone in their 50s and somebody in their 70s, and then everything in between. So it's very important that you identify gaps and fill those gaps with the right product. And then make sure that you send the right offer at the right time. Timing is everything. I know you know that. So when you have leads, make sure you're following up with them at the right cadence. Then once you sell, wow the customer. Give them a reason to look for you again. Give them a reason to refer you to people they know. Because once again, that's the strongest type of advertising that you have, is word of mouth. So go ahead and ask for those referrals. Did you know that nearly 90% of customers say that they would refer, but only 10% are ever asked for a referral? So ask for referrals. Number 5, get started with these 5 steps. Segment your list. Create those offers that convert. Deliver and wow. Ask for referrals, and then just simply get started. If you're interested, send me an email, and I will send you this checklist, 50 ways to wow your customers. Send me an email after this event, and later in the day today or early tomorrow, I'll send you that worksheet giving you ways that you can wow your customers. Bottom line, today you need to up your game. You need to be marketing to let people know that you're out there or that you are still out there. So many people are taking for granted that businesses are closing. Let them know you are still in business. Let them know you are there to help them. Be of service, especially now. And don't worry about it being perfect. Done is better than perfect. Give it a try. See what works. The only way you're going to learn is by getting something done. Simply take action. All right, next, let's talk about operations. I'm going to turn the floor over now to Tony. You're on, Tony.
All right, thank you, Ken. Like I said earlier, I think it's just so important that business owners and leaders be cognizant of the times that we're in and think and take the decisive actions that are necessary. As Ken mentioned, I think many folks kind of have that deer in the headlight approach, just waiting for this to pass and not doing anything. You want to click to the next slide? Just so you know who you're talking to, my background is kind of called classic. I have a background in accounting, a CPA, an MBA in finance and corporate strategy from the University of Michigan. I talked about my inflection point consulting work as well as leading Blue Halo Biomedical. However, several years ago, I was really what was considered a turnaround expert. And that was a function of the times, a function of leading a real estate company through the 2008 recession, a function of working with an environmental consulting firm that had their line of credit pulled and had massive profit losses, and even a nonprofit that was balancing their budgets with one-time funding. So, there's through, experience, I know that there are leading indicators and there's lagging indicators. And from the perspective of businesses, it's much better to be proactive when you still have some dry powder, when you still have some ability to move, than waiting until things get really bad and then going, oh crap, what do I do next, and not having a lot of alternatives. My perspective is, that the stock market's going up a little bit and people are saying, oh, there's a recovery, things are getting a little better. I do think we all need to hope for the best, certainly from the medical front. But honestly, I think it's more appropriate to plan for the worst. There is so much of the economy that is being impacted and materially being impacted. Anybody who has a B2C, business to consumer business, is already seeing that. There's no physical outlet for customers to find you. And if you don't have a B2C company, you're working business to business, and a lot of your customers will be impacted by their loss of consumers. So you're either seeing it now or you're going to see it. And, under a best case, we start to trickle back to normal, when in Q3, Q4, but normal isn't going to be the same normal of picking things up. There's going to be a lot less money around. There's going to be a lot less activity. So again, I just think it's highly important to plan, for the worst. I'm not a negative person, but I know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, sort of thing. What many people need to realize is that small changes have a really big impact. You might say, well, hey, I'm making 30% on the bottom line, but if you're losing 10% of your sales, you're losing not only your margin of cost of goods sold, but you're losing your overhead coverage. And so it's very easy to go from highly profitable to break even to unprofitable with even a small loss of customers. One thing that, I think many companies ignore are their hidden costs. A sales drop is visible, but there's so many other costs that are invisible. You have overheads, things that you think must be paid. And we'll talk a little bit more about each of these in a minute, but there's overheads like rent and insurance. So if you have a sales drop, you still need to pay these costs. That being said, I would encourage all of you to start working with your landlords and seeing what, if not rent abatement may be available, but what timing issues you may be able to manifest. I talked to a gentleman recently who was looking to renew a lease and was about ready to do it. And we talked about, well, hey, at this point, I think you might be able to ask for 6 months of rent forgiveness and a 10% reduction in rent. Why is that? Because in this environment, landlords do not want to have a vacancy and would clearly be looking at a very long period. And in New York, we're already seeing leasing rates down 43%. So those are costs that you have, but they're also costs that you can mandate. Payroll. You have salaried and hourly payroll. And it's a critical factor. It's a critical metric. But you can't be looking backwards. You can't be looking at what your sales were for the last month, quarter, or year. You need to be looking ahead and looking at each person and saying, does this person really add value today? Is this work that could be consolidated? What can we be doing? And how much of these costs, again, are fixed or variable? Accounts receivable and accounts payable. If you haven't already seen it, you will start to see your accounts receivable grow. Companies, large and small, are taking longer to pay because they're conserving their cash flows. We've already seen some of the largest companies draw down $1 billion of their line of credit because they're conserving cash. They know that's going to be an issue. And accounts payable is another is a lever that you have. You may think, well, I have a bill, I have to pay it in 30 days. Well, again, just as you're going to be paid a little slower, it may make sense for you to conserve your cash and look at extending your accounts payable by 15 or 30 days. Inventory. Again, a crucial factor, and one that a lot of people stock based on historical patterns. Again, things are different. Things are going to be different. And if you're a company that has inventory, if you're not a service business, I would encourage you, with the exception of very hard to get materials, things that are suddenly scarce, to be much more prudent about levels you're ordering. And you might say, well, why? I can always sell them. Well, first off, when you buy inventory, you're going to have to pay cash for them. And cash is something that may be very scarce in the near future. And secondly, you may be stuck with inventory that may be difficult to unload. I had a client that was importing rebar during the financial crisis about a dozen years ago. And at a certain point, they were eager to get as much as they could because they could always sell it, whether at a large margin or a small margin. And when things started to roll downhill, they were stuck with rebar that they couldn't sell at any price and wound up selling it eventually for a price, but the price was about 25 cents on the dollar. So an inventory, while it's a balance sheet asset, it's a cost of working capital. So, you know, again, while sales drops are visible, working capital costs are often invisible. So what should you do? Now, all these areas, you know, we could spend an hour or 2 hours on, and in fact, you know, are important in a strategic discussion that you have. I would encourage every company, now this is in good times and bad, to go through these steps, but it's so important in turbulent times. The first is the 13-week cash flow. If you're not familiar with this term and you have an advisor, you really need to question what help you're getting. But a 13-week cash flow is as simple as it sounds. You put together a cash flow with all of your inflows and all of your outflows that go forward 13 weeks or 3 months, and you update it every week. So it's constantly giving you a 3-month look ahead. You might say, well, why is that? My business is predictable. Well, again, in an environment like this where you may be facing current or future sales declines, and you know or have leverage on certain obligations, it gives you a sense as to where you are vis-a-vis your cash. And it allows you to say, well, what if sales decline %? Or what if margins drop? You know, what's my cash situation? So it's a crucial tool for any business, but in a time like this where you're most likely facing some combination of reduced sales, potentially higher costs on some materials, it's important that you understand how much cash you do have. And just as an aside, I will mention a conversation I had this morning. I was speaking with a friend of mine in Singapore. And from a crisis perspective, Singapore is about 2 to 4 weeks ahead of where we are. And I was saying, well, how's it going there? And what he was saying was, I'm having customers cut back as they're trimming inventories, as they're eliminating non-essential activities. I'm seeing a lot more competition for orders, and net, I'm having to accept a lower price than I did before. You may say, well, why would I do that? And the logic, is fairly simple. In a market that has changed, and I think at least for the medium term, the market has changed. You have to take the philosophy that a sale, as long as it covers costs, is contributing to your overheads. It may not be at the same margins they were before, but if you're facing a situation where you have increased competition, where your customers are more price sensitive, and again, you're looking at some net reductions, the idea of making some margin that contributes to your overhead is a positive. Again, those are things that you should consider while putting together your 13-week cash flow, which again, isn't really a static document, but it's a living and breathing document. You update every week, and one you use to kind of play around with, well, what if I did this business or didn't do business? What does it mean? Core versus non-core. A lot of companies, particularly in good times, expand beyond their core business. Their core business is traditionally what they started at, what they're great at. So for example, I mentioned an environmental services company I worked with some years ago. They were fantastic at working with petroleum companies and remediating spills at gas stations. And they were Florida-based, and Florida has soil that is really susceptible to spills. Somewhere along the line, they said, well, gee, we kind of do construction. Why don't we, do some of this landfill construction? It's the same basic thing. They didn't know what they were doing. They had cost overruns. They lost their shirt, and the company almost went under as a result of that. So from your perspective, I think it's important that you recognize what is your core business and what is your non-core business. And if it's not core, it often isn't profitable. And I would encourage you to look at the fixed and variable costs with each and just kind of pull back to your core business. Staffing, same thing, and you're probably seeing a theme here. You may have had a staff that was perfect for your business in January or February of 2020. You may be overstaffed right now. Who's essential? Who's not? How hard was it to hire this person? Again, as kind of cruel as it is, I think we're certainly better off always hoping for the best and planning for the worst. And again, we don't want to do this, but to the extent that cash is king, cash is something that will become very scarce in a downturn. Making the hard decisions and making cuts now instead of waiting 2, 3, 4 months to see what happens will save you a lot of money, will provide more flexibility in the future, and frankly, provides the opportunity to pivot as necessary and potentially to invest in those things that you can add value. Vendors, now this is the other side of it. Just like you are probably seeing pressures with sales fall off, or maybe requests for lower prices, this is your opportunity to negotiate. A lot of people think negotiating is a dirty word. It's unseemly or will leave a bad feeling in the counterparty's part. It's part of what needs to be done. It's part of business. And I would encourage you at every opportunity, negotiate both the price, how much you're paying per unit, and the terms. And if you are in a position that you're willing to make a long-term commitment, that might be something that is rare today, and you may be able to use that as an opportunity to negotiate even a better price. But again, be preemptive in your dialogue. Bank. Talked a little bit about large companies drawing down their lines of credit, $500 million, $1 billion, companies that really don't need to draw down this money, but they're doing it in a preponderance of safety. Why? Because there may come a time when the banks themselves have so many people drawing down their lines that they start pulling lines. So if you have a credit line, I would encourage you to seriously look at drawing it down. The cost of the interest, even if you don't need the money, would be relatively nominal versus the cost of needing the money and not having it available at that time. And then certainly, we've all heard about the free stimulus money, and free isn't quite right, but there's literally free money floating around. And if you haven't done so, I would certainly encourage all of you to take advantage of the $10,000 emergency grant program. You can literally apply for that in less than half an hour, probably 15 minutes. And while I haven't seen the money actually come in, it supposedly takes about a week for your application to get filled out and a few days to fund. The other one is the PPP program, which again will give you some amount of money that can be used to stabilize your business. Summation from this perspective, I just think it's extraordinarily important that you look at your business seriously. You do your 13-week cash flow. You look at what is core, both in product and in people, and you make the adjustments necessary while you have the flexibility. Now, I know most of you are entrepreneurs of some sort. You're probably great at engineering. You're probably great at law. You may be great at medicine. You may be great at marketing, but you probably aren't great at finance and corporate strategy. And I would encourage you, if you don't already have one, to have a thought partner or a formal partner that you go through your strategy with, that you go through your 13-week cash flow with. And, they can help you not only making sure that it's done properly, but they can look at opportunities that you may have not considered. They may say, well, you may think this is a core part of your business, but it really isn't. Or it's in fact, costing you money to have. And the right partner is frankly a value creator, not a cost. But I think it is important, whether it's internal or external, for all leaders to have somebody they can bounce ideas off of. Internally, if you have trusted confidants who know the customers and know the operations, engage them. Don't assume you knew them all. You know them all. Take your stakeholders externally and internally as assets and utilize their perspective, utilize them as a sounding board, and utilize their perspective. Okay, next slide, please. And in all of this, I think communication is key. I was made CFO of a venture-backed real estate development company in August of 2007. And very quickly found myself calling an emergency meeting of the board of directors, talking about the deterioration in the environment. I was later made president of the company and helped lead it, to a crash landing. But fortunately, I used a metaphor: the plane engines caught on fire, but we were able to land it, and there were no fatalities. But how was that done? That was communicating with my stakeholders. In that case, it was my investors, it was my banks, it was my vendors, including major construction companies. And we had those hard conversations about, hey, you guys may not get everything you're entitled to, but this is what I'm going to do, and this is why your tomorrow is going to be better than your today. And again, I'm not saying any of you are in that situation, but as we enter this very challenging environment, which I do think is going to be challenging, you need to communicate, you need to be preemptive, proactive, and you need to talk about what you're doing and why. And if things change, you keep communicating. In the real estate example, the market got a lot worse, a lot faster, a lot more dramatically than anybody thought, but we were able to keep those same relationships with investors, with bankers, with construction firms, because we were able to talk about, this is what's happened, this is what's good, this isn't what is so good, and this is what we're going to do. So as you go through your journey, I think it's so important to communicate with your stakeholders, both as the previous slide said, as sounding boards, as thought partners, but also as partners in this process, talking about how we're making changes and how it's going to make us stronger to get through to the end. And at some point, the market will recover, but I think it's going to be an extended period of time. And I think, as I've said, we all need to be prepared, but there will be another day. And to the extent that we keep communicating, you may have gone through a rough journey together, but you'll have gone through the journey together. And then when things come out to the other side, you'll have people that you can trust going into battle with, and will trust you as a leader on the growth side. Next slide.
Tony, thanks very much. That was a great session. Every time, I've known Tony for over 10 years, and every time we have a business conversation, I always pick something up. So Tony, that was really awesome. Thank you. We've got plenty of time for Q&A. We reserve time all the way up to the top of the next hour. So use this time to think about what kinds of questions you'd like to ask. If there are some comments that you have that you'd like one or both of us to address, we're here to help you out for sure. And if you joined us late, or if you don't remember where the Q&A and chat boxes are, move your mouse, no matter what type of device you're on, whether you're on a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop, a desktop computer. Move your mouse down to the bottom, and that will reveal a black bar. The red arrow that you see is pointing to Q&A. You can go ahead and throw something in the Q&A or the chat, whichever one you're most comfortable with. Hey, the essence is these are very uncertain times, but they don't have to be uncertain times. The thing is to take action, and we want to help you. Tony is managing partner of Inflection Point Consulting. I'm managing director of the Countess Group. Together, we've got the resources that can help you navigate through this very difficult time. So our contact information is up there. I've also got a quick poll to run, which is simply, would you like one or both of us to give you a call? Just use yes or no for either or both of us, and we can go ahead and get your questions answered. Gary says, great job, Tony and Ken. Thank you, Gary. And our next event, the Countess group is tomorrow morning at 11:30 in the morning Eastern time. As I mentioned at the start, 7 days a week at 11:30 in the morning Eastern time, I do a 30-minute marketing webinar, and the topic is different every single day. So if you've attended at least one of them, know that the one tomorrow will be a different one than it was today, yesterday, or the day before. So we've got some time for questions. Go ahead and let us know if you've got anything you'd like us to address. Let me take a look at one of my other screens here and see what else we might have that you should know about. Hang on one second here. Oh, I think we got them all. So Kathy says, good info. Gary says, thank you both. What else do we have here? We have a quiet crowd. Must be the after lunch sleepies is what I'll attribute it to. So, hey, if there's nothing else that you'd like to ask us, we'll go ahead and say thank you so much for joining us during the day today, no matter what part of the country you're in. I look forward to having you attend one of our future events. You'll be able to find this webinar on a replay. I'll be posting it on YouTube. I'll be posting it on our website. You'll get an email from me that says essentially, thanks for attending this event, and that'll be your invitation to check out the replays. So when you have time, they'll be up there. We don't have a plan to take it down. But I do hope that you'll reach out to Tony, reach out to me, let us help you through this difficult time. It's obviously something we had not, none of us had really expected. Tony, do you have any closing comments?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to speak to y'all, and I hope everyone is proactive in their businesses so you can have the best possible outcome and have a great afternoon.
Okay, bye everybody.